Hello. The sound of glass shattering against the wall behind me made my blood run cold. I turned around slowly, watching the amber bourbon drip down my living room wall while my fiancée Madison stood there, swaying slightly, her perfectly manicured hands still frozen in the throwing position. The house party around us had gone dead silent. "You'll never find anyone better than me, Kyle," she slurred, jabbing her finger in my direction. "And when I'm done with you, you'll have nothing left." "Nothing." She let out a harsh laugh that seemed to echo through our now silent living room. "Just ask Richard. He's paying his ex-wife half his salary even 5 years after their divorce." Our guests, mostly our mutual friends and some of Madison's colleagues from her law firm, stood frozen, drinks halfway to their lips, watching the scene unfold. I noticed her coworker Amanda shooting her a warning look, trying to get her to stop talking. But Madison was too far gone, riding the wave of expensive bourbon and unrestrained anger. "You think I'm with you because of love?" She stumbled slightly, catching herself on the arm of our leather couch. "Please, do you know how much this house is worth? How much your tech company shares will be worth in a few years?" Her voice took on a mocking tone. "Oh, but don't worry, baby. I'll let you visit the beach house on weekends, maybe." I stood there, my mind racing back to all the late nights she'd been working, the mysterious texts she'd quickly hide when I walked into the room, the sudden business trips that came up at the last minute. Everything was falling into place like pieces of a twisted puzzle. "You know what's funny, Madison?" I finally spoke, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "I actually planned to surprise you tonight. I was going to announce to everyone that I'd added you to the house deed." I pulled out my phone, ignoring her suddenly widening eyes. "But instead, I think I'll call my lawyer. I'm sure he'd be very interested in the video our security camera just captured of you admitting your true intentions." The color drained from her face as her eyes darted to the small camera in the corner of the room, the one she'd insisted we install after claiming she'd heard noises at night. The same camera that had caught her sneaking in at 3 a.m. last week with her clothes disheveled, and the week before that with her lipstick smeared. "You're bluffing?" she whispered, but the slight tremor in her voice betrayed her uncertainty. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Am I? Tell me, does the name Michael Anderson ring any bells? Your client from the Peterson case." I watched as recognition and fear flashed across her face. Interesting how many late-night consultations that case needed. Even more interesting that the case was settled 2 months ago. Madison's perfect facade cracked completely as she lunged for my phone, but her intoxicated state made her movements clumsy. She stumbled, catching herself on the edge of our custom-made dining table, the one she'd insisted we needed to maintain appearances for her law firm dinner parties. "You don't understand," she hissed, her designer dress askew. "Everything I did was for us. For our future." Her voice rose hysterically as she looked around the room, seemingly seeking support from our guests. Most of them were looking anywhere but at us, except for Amanda, who was furiously typing on her phone. I let out a bitter laugh. "For us? Was it for us when you were meeting Michael at the Riverside Hotel every Thursday?" I turned to the slowly dispersing crowd. "Oh, you didn't know about that either? Funny how those essential client meetings always happen to be at the same hotel where Michael's firm holds their conference rooms." "How dare you?" Madison shrieked, but I could see the panic in her eyes. "You had me followed?"
No, Madison.
"You did this to yourself." I pulled up the banking app on my phone. "You see, when you insisted on joining our accounts for better financial planning, you forgot one tiny detail. I get notifications for all card transactions, including the ones from that joint credit card you so desperately wanted to share." The room had grown impossibly quieter. I could practically hear the gears turning in everyone's heads as they processed what was unfolding before them. These were the same people who had watched us become the perfect couple over the past 3 years, the same ones who had congratulated us on our engagement 6 months ago. "The Riverside Hotel shows up quite frequently on our statement," I continued, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. "Always on Thursdays, always for exactly 3 hours. But here's where it gets interesting, the charges alternate between your card and another one. Care to guess whose name is on the other card? Madison's face had gone from flushed with anger to ashen. Behind her, I noticed Amanda had stopped typing and was now slowly backing toward the door, her designer purse clutched tightly to her chest. "Oh, and Amanda?" I called out, making her freeze mid-step. "You might want to stick around. After all, you've been such a helpful accomplice, making those dinner reservations for them, covering for Madison during those emergency client meetings. I'm sure the ethics board at your law firm would love to hear all about it." Amanda's eyes darted between Madison and me, her loyalty visibly wavering. The look they exchanged spoke volumes. A silent conversation that confirmed everything I had suspected for months. "It's not what you think," Madison pleaded, her voice suddenly small. "Kyle, baby, please. We can talk about this. We can fix this." She took a stumbling step toward me, reaching out with trembling hands. "I love you. Everything I said before, I was just drunk. You know how I get when I drink too much." I stepped back, maintaining the distance between us. "Fix this? Like you tried to fix the prenup draft I found on your laptop last week? The one that would have given you 70% of my assets." I watched as recognition dawned in her eyes. "You really should have password protected that file, counselor." The remaining guests were quickly gathering their belongings, eager to escape the unfolding drama. I noticed Madison's brother Tyler lingering by the kitchen doorway, his expression a mix of shame and resignation that told me he'd known about everything all along. "Tyler," I called out, making him stop mid-escape. "Remember last month when you asked to borrow 50 grand for your startup? Funny how that request came right after Madison's lunch with Michael Anderson's investment banker brother." I watched as Madison's eyes widened in horror. "I guess keeping things in the family was the plan all along, wasn't it?" Tyler had the decency to look guilty as he set down his drink. "Look, man, I didn't want any part of this. Madison said it was just business networking." "Tyler, shut up," Madison snapped, but the damage was done. I pulled out another phone from my pocket, my old one that Madison thought I'd recycled months ago. "Business networking? Is that what you call this text exchange I recovered?" I started reading aloud. "Tyler, make sure Kyle signs those investment papers before the prenup is finalized. Michael's brother can't hold that venture capital spot forever." The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. Madison's perfectly maintained composure completely shattered as she realized just how much evidence I had accumulated. Her mascara was running now, creating dark streaks down her flushed cheeks. "You went through my private messages?" she sputtered, trying to regain control of the situation like the skilled lawyer she was. "That's illegal. You can't dash." "Actually, I can." I cut her off. "Especially when those messages were synchronized to our shared laptop, the one you insisted we get for better work-life integration. You really should have been more careful about leaving your accounts logged in." I turned to address the few remaining guests, most of whom were now huddled near the exits. "You all remember our engagement party last year? When Madison gave that touching speech about how we met at that charity gala?" I pulled up a series of emails on my phone. Well, turns out that meeting wasn't quite as serendipitous as she claimed. These emails between her and Michael show they'd been planning it for months. The gala, the accidental meeting, even that supposed spontaneous weekend in the Hamptons where we fell in love. It was all orchestrated. Madison's legs seemed to give out as she sank onto our imported Italian leather sofa. "You don't understand," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I had to secure my future. The firm's partnership track dash required you to show financial stability and social connections." I finished for her. "Yeah, I read those emails too. Apparently, I was the perfect mark, successful tech entrepreneur, good family background, and according to your words, naive enough to be manageable." The bitterness in my voice could have etched glass. Amanda finally found her voice, stepping forward with her chin raised. "Madison was just being smart about her future. In this industry, you need to think strategically. You can't blame her for dash." "For what, Amanda? For orchestrating an elaborate con? For sleeping with Michael while planning to drain my accounts?" I turned back to Madison. Want to tell everyone about your little offshore account? The one you've been funneling money into for the past year. Madison's head snapped up, genuine shock replacing the calculated distress on her face. How did you know about that? Let's just say Michael's not as discreet as you thought. I pulled up another email on my phone. He really should be more careful about what he forwards to his personal email, especially detailed instructions about wire transfers to the Cayman Islands. Tyler stepped forward, his face pale. Maddie, you said that account was for our parents' retirement fund. Oh, it gets better, I continued, my voice steady despite the churning in my stomach. Those networking events you've been attending every month? Turns out they were meetings with a private investigator. The same one who's been digging into my company's financials, my family history, even my medical records. The remaining guests were now openly staring at Madison, their expressions a mix of horror and fascination. Her carefully constructed image of the brilliant, ethical lawyer was crumbling before their eyes. You want to know what really kills me? I said, my voice dropping lower. It wasn't the cheating or even the planned financial manipulation. It was finding out that the miscarriage you had last year, the one that brought us closer together and made me propose, was completely fabricated. A collective gasp echoed through the room. Madison's face went completely white. Those medical records you showed me? Forged. The doctor's appointments? Staged. You even had Amanda here play the role of your grief counselor over the phone. I looked at Amanda, who had the grace to look ashamed. Professional ethics aside, that was a new low, even for you. Kyle, please, Madison whispered, mascara-stained tears rolling down her cheeks. I know I messed up, but everything I did was for us. Finished.
No, Madison.
Everything you did was for you. And you know what the saddest part is? I actually transferred a significant portion of my company's shares last week. I paused, watching hope flicker across her face. But not to you. Madison straightened up, her legal instincts kicking in despite her disheveled state. What do you mean? What did you do? Remember Julia from the DA's office? The one you always said was beneath your professional standing? I smiled coldly. Turns out she's very interested in cases of legal malpractice and fraud. Even more interested when those cases involve prominent law firms and their rising star associates. The color drained from Madison's face as the implications sank in. Behind her, Amanda was already rushing for the door, her heels clicking frantically against the hardwood floors. Don't worry, Amanda, I called after her. The ethics board will be receiving their copy of everything first thing Monday morning. I'm sure they'll be particularly interested in how often client confidentiality was breached in those little planning sessions you and Madison had. Madison's professional composure finally shattered completely. You can't do this to me. Do you know how long I've worked to get where I am? The partnership was practically guaranteed. Funny you should mention that partnership, I replied, pulling out one final document from my jacket pocket. I had a very interesting conversation with the senior partners last week. They were especially concerned about certain billing irregularities I discovered. Apparently, charging personal hotel rendezvous as client meetings is frowned upon. Tyler stepped forward, his face ashen. What about my startup funding? Already canceled, I confirmed. And the investment firm has been notified about the attempted fraud. Michael's brother might want to update his resume. Madison lunged for the document in my hand, but I easily sidestepped her drunken movement. She stumbled, catching herself on the edge of the coffee table, the same one where she'd left her laptop open last week, unknowingly giving me access to everything I needed. I've already sent copies of all the evidence to the relevant authorities, I continued, watching as the last threads of her control unraveled. The Bar Association, the DA's office, the ethics board, and of course your firm's managing partners. I especially enjoyed forwarding those emails where you mocked their outdated approach to client relations. You've ruined everything, she whispered, mascara-stained tears rolling down her face.
No, Madison.
You did that all by yourself. I walked to the front door and held it open. Now get out of my house. My security team will be here in 10 minutes to make sure you take only what you came with when we met. Anything purchased during our relationship days. After all, we wouldn't want to complicate the fraud investigation with missing assets. As she stumbled toward the door, supported by her equally shell-shocked brother, I delivered the final blow. Oh, and Madison, you might want to check your phone. Those compromising photos you thought were safely hidden in your encrypted cloud storage? They're currently being downloaded by every partner at your firm. I hear they're particularly interested in the ones showing you and Michael in the conference room after hours. The door closed behind them with a satisfying click, leaving me alone in the sudden silence of my home. I pulled out my phone one last time, sending a brief text to my lawyer. It's done. File everything. Thank you for listening the story to the end. Write your thoughts about it in the comments and do not forget to subscribe. See you in the next videos. Bye.